Continuing on with the Clone Wars, I hopped on over to the next arc. Ahsoka learns political unrest on Mandalore. Season 2, Episode 12, The Mandalore Plot. Season 2, Episode 13, Voyage of Temptation. And Season 2, Episode 14, Duchess of Mandalore. This arc is 9 episodes, so I'll break it up into 3 different videos with 3 different episodes in each video. Let's jump in. The Mandalore Plot. There's a rumor that Mandalorian Council leader Duchess Satine is secretly building her own army to fight against the Separatists, and Obi-Wan is sent out to investigate. So Mandalore has a violent past, but the Mandalorian leaders say that they're past that, that's history, all of their violent warriors were exiled. They claim that all the rumors are not true. This is kind of off topic, and I just want to talk about it briefly. Mandalore armor. I've known about Mandalore and whatnot for a while just because as a member of the 501st, I know people who have Mandalorian armor, and the whole story about Boba Fett's armor always felt weird to me. To me, it's another example of something being small, retcon, to have a huge backstory and purpose and explanation. As a kid, I just thought Boba Fett's armor was cool. And hey, he probably made it himself because, you know, Star Wars is a world full of scavengers and smugglers and people just getting by. But nope. The armor is from Mandalore and was worn by Mandalorian warriors, and there's some big epic thing about Boba Fett's armor. Obviously, that won't dictate my enjoyment of this arc at all. I've just never quite understood why small details often have some epic reason for existing. I mean, is Han Solo's DL-44 gonna be something from the past too? Some big epic thing? I don't know. In a past life, everyone was a king or queen. No one was a peasant. So there's this group called Death Watch. They want Mandalore to go back to its warrior ways, they want conflict, they want to get rid of their current pacifist government. This group was exiled to the moon of Concordia. I don't know where this is going, but I really like the idea of this episode so far. One single people splintering groups, one exiled to a moon, one in power. So a bomb goes off while the Duchess is giving Obi-Wan a tour. Obi-Wan says it's a political statement, which seems to be obvious. A man goes on the run and Obi-Wan gives chase. They get into a scuffle, and instead of giving himself up, the man who just set off the explosive and ran jumps off of a building, killing himself. He had some last words spoken in a language that the viewer can't understand. He says something and the Duchess actually repeats it in his ear. I'm not sure how to interpret this. And that's obviously what they're going for, right? Did she just repeat some Death Watch slogan, like I'm on your side or something like that? Or did she just say like long live Mandalore or just some friendly goodbye thing? Who knows? But as a viewer, it's difficult to know if we can trust the Duchess at this point. So the Duchess and Obi-Wan go to Concordia, the moon where the jumper came from. It was around this time that I realized that one of the dude's voices in the Mandalore armor was Jon Favreau. Cool. Obi-Wan splits off, gives the Duchess an earpiece so they can communicate. He goes to investigate some mines that are supposedly abandoned, but the mine is not abandoned. He gets attacked and gets captured. The Duchess hears Obi-Wan's distress call in her ear. She's with the governor, who she seems suspicious of because she's not telling him the truth. She goes to save Obi-Wan. She distracts the Mandalorian dudes who are trying to crush Obi-Wan and is able to turn off the machine right before it squashes him. They fight their way out through a large group of Death Watch guys. One of my favorite parts in this episode, and it's subtle, very subtle, a tiny little moment, but an evil one, is when the warrior commander is walking towards Obi-Wan and the Duchess, and there's one of his wounded soldiers on the ground. He just nonchalantly walks by and says, "Failure," and blasts him in the head. I don't know why, but I always appreciate when the bad guys are shown to be ruthless. It makes you root for the good guys even more. It's some dictator type stuff. And it turns out that both the warrior commander and the governor are the same person. Despite knowing that both of them were voiced by Jon Favreau, going, oh yeah, this character is voiced by him too. I never expected them to be the same person in the show. I thought he was just voicing 2 different characters. But it's kind of neat that it turned out that way. I guess that is the big clue, right? If you didn't know it was Jon Favreau, and you were just watching the show not thinking about how voice actors often do multiple roles in a show, the fact that they sound the same is the giveaway. So the governor has an ancient lightsaber from the Old Republic. Compared to the lightsaber as we know them, it's primitive looking. Kind of a neat little piece of lore that I appreciated. He and Obi-Wan get into a fight. Obi-Wan and the Duchess eventually escape. I thought this was a really solid episode and a good way to start the arc. There's intrigue, there's mystery, there's conflict. The only part I wasn't a big fan of was when Obi-Wan was captured and frozen in that force field thing. It's kind of like when the James Bond villain puts James Bond in a device that will kill James Bond in like X amount of minutes instead of just killing James Bond, and James Bond always escapes. But hey, our heroes have to survive, right? Right? After watching the Mandalore plot, I hopped on over to Voyage of Temptation. So the Duchess heads to the Senate to plead her case. Obi-Wan and Anakin suspect that the Death Squad terrorist organization might be backed by the Separatists. The Duchess wants absolute peace. Obi-Wan seems to want a swift, offensive military attack, a swift victory, fighting for peace. As he says, I thought it was interesting that Obi-Wan and the Duchess have a past. It would seem like a romantic past at this point, and they seem to be reverting back to bickering like a couple. This is a side of Obi-Wan I don't think I've ever seen before. I thought this dynamic was interesting and extremely poignant in the real world, the sarcasm of a soldier and the delusion of a dreamer, as they both said. Two sides wanting the same goal of peace, with two vastly different ideas on how to get there. The Duchess thinks that even extremists can be reasoned with, and Obi-Wan says maybe if they could be heard over the clanking of battle droids. I liked that line. Despite someone's best wishes and non-combative pacifist leanings, never solely rely on the highly unlikely potential of another side's willingness to listen. While Obi-Wan and the Duchess are bickering, a droid is on the ship killing off clone troopers, assassinating them. I think two go missing. At one point it grabs a clone and pulls him up, screaming like a horror movie, like an alien on the Nostromo. It's interesting to see the flip side of Anakin's coin in Obi-Wan. Anakin gives in to the attachment, loves Padme, ignores the rules. Obi-Wan chose to live by the Jedi Code, leaving his relationship with the Duchess, two different paths under the same code of ethics, if you will. So Anakin and the clones investigate the missing clones on the ship. Obi-Wan informs the senators to stay put until the situation is figured out. Anakin encounters this assassin droid. Him and the clones take it out, but we find out that there are multiple of these droids, spidery looking droids, running through the ship, big ones, small ones, a ton of small ones, little tiny spiders. I loved the look of the little ones, and I wish they played a bigger role in the episode, but they were stopped super fast. I thought it would be fun to have a ton of them just swarming the ship. Obi-Wan and Anakin figure out that one of the senators is a turncoat, a liar, a thief, a criminal with protection of the law. Anti-flag, anyone? So they're trying to find out who the traitor is. Obi-Wan's method is to bring one of the spider droids into the room of senators and says that he thinks the spider won't attack the traitor. And this disturbs the Duchess, saying that it borders on torture. But the plan works. It's revealed that Tal Merrick is the traitor. This sequence was fun. A little problem solving from Obi-Wan, a neat way to reveal the turncoat. So Tal hops up and takes the Duchess prisoner. He brings her to the bridge, kills off the pilot, the officers on the deck, and takes control of the ship, contacts the governor, leader of the Death Squad watch group, and he says reinforcements are on the way. A bunch of droids board the ship, start fighting the clones. The Duchess is captured by Tal, who holds a button that will blow up the ship. Obi-Wan is walking with them. The Duchess and Obi-Wan have a little moment, and Obi-Wan said he would have left the Jedi Order if she just said the word. A little bit of remorse in Obi-Wan's voice, in his heart perhaps. Interesting layer added to Obi-Wan. And then, what I think is my favorite scene in the entire show so far. I loved this moment. I no joke think it's my favorite moment in the show I've seen so far. The Duchess and Obi-Wan escape Tal's clutches. The Duchess has a blaster pointed at his head. Obi-Wan is standing ready to strike with his lightsaber. Tal is giving this monologue about how the Duchess would go against her pacifist ideals if she killed him, and Obi-Wan would let down the Duchess if he killed him. And then bam! Anakin runs a lightsaber into Tal's back, and nonchalantly says, what, he was gonna blow up the ship. This moment was awesome. Yeah, I think it's my favorite moment in the show so far. Normally it's pretty easy to predict when someone is gonna save the day at the last second, but for whatever reason, I wasn't expecting it. I didn't predict it. I was expecting Tal to escape, actually. I really liked it. When everyone was too hesitant to make a decision, you have Anakin come in and just make a decision, ending the standoff. I loved it. So they're all safe for the moment. Droids are all defeated on the ship, Tal is dead, the ship is secured. After watching Voyage of Temptation, I hopped on over to Duchess of Mandalore. So, everyone is back at the Senate. The Duchess is there to convince the Senate that the Death Watch group does not represent all of Mandalore. Once again, we see the leader of Death Watch talking to Count Dooku. Dooku tells him to send a Death Watch assassin to Coruscant to kill the Duchess. We cut to the Senate discussing Death Watch. A hologram is played of Deputy Minister Jarek, saying that he wants Republic intervention, saying that the government has led him to civil war. This throws off the Duchess. It makes no sense to her. Jarek wouldn't say these things. With what we know of Palpatine, it makes this scene interesting. It makes it fun. We have a secret. We know the secret. He's the puppet master, the string puller. He says that Jarek died this morning due to a Death Watch bomb. But Palpatine is orchestrating all of this with the goal of occupying Mandalore under the guise of security. The Duchess sees the Republic as like a trampling organization who pokes into the business of sovereign and free systems, instilling their will where it is not wanted. It's interesting to see this point of view. It makes Obi-Wan and the Jedi seem like kind of brainwashed drones into servitude for the preservation of a system that thrives on acquisition and domination and occupation. It's interesting. As the Duchess is flying away, a little bomb is detonated on her ship, throwing off the navigation system, and they jump out just in time. It was an assassination attempt. All of these events only feed into the idea that the Republic needs to intervene. It's all orchestrated. It's all set up to feed into this idea. If the assassination attempt worked, then there would be no voice of opposition, and Palpatine could use the Duchess's death for sympathy points and a rallying cause for intervention. But the plot fails, and she is still alive to speak, and is refusing to allow the Republic to interfere, but the Senate voted to occupy. There's nothing she can do. The Republic will involve itself. Little later on, the Duchess is handed a recording of a hologram, and is told that the hologram that was actually played in the Senate is not the full recording. But right when she's handed the tape, an assassin shoots the messenger. The authorities come out of the woodwork and assume the Duchess was the one to shoot, and then everyone is chasing the Duchess, but she escapes. I like all of the mass manipulation going on in this episode. The plan is for Death Watch to look like heroes when the Republic comes to occupy Mandalore. The manipulation of the citizenry, pulling the strings, it's interesting. It's real. So the Duchess eventually hands the disc with the actual recording to Obi-Wan, and she gives herself up so Obi-Wan can enter the Senate without question. And when Obi-Wan does, he gives the disc to Padme, who goes in front of the Senate and plays the unedited, untampered recordings. I really like this episode as well. All three of these episodes were good, but this one had a lot going on. It was kind of interesting. Manipulation of data, showing that sometimes media, government can't be trusted. Media can be manipulated to fit the narrative of a certain position. It also showed governments and large organizations backing smaller rebel groups for personal gain, basically hired mercenaries to do dirty work that the larger organization doesn't want to be responsible for. I love what Obi-Wan said at the end too. Things are changing, he said, and sometimes the line between friend and foe is blurred, now more than ever. It was a good line. Overall, these 3 episodes were fantastic. All 3 episodes were different, but fit together perfectly. A+, 2 thumbs up, 10 out of 10. Right now, with these 3 episodes, I still have 6 more to go, but right now, this is kind of on track to become my favorite arc. We'll see. Time to watch the next 3 episodes. HelloGreedo, out.